G.D. Vegas Fojarash, hello and welcome back to Craic on the Coast, the show where we celebrate the stories, songs, and spirit of Ireland, from the wild Atlantic way to the rocky shores of New England. I'm your host, Michael Schilling.
And I'm Shaun Morgan, and today is a special one because it's going to be our Halloween episode. But instead of talking about costumes and candy and trick-or-treating in the American sense, we're going to bring things back to ancient Ireland and the Celtic festival known as Samhain, the true origin of Halloween.
That's right. Long before the jack-o'-lanterns and trick-or-treating, there was Iha Hauna, the night of Samhain, marking the end of harvest and the start of winter, a time, as the old stories say, the mist between two worlds grew thin.
And, you're giving me chills already, Mike, just looking forward to it. And to help us explore the incredible link between Ireland's ancient past and our modern Halloween, we're joined by our best guest so far, I'll say, the Consul General of Ireland to Boston, Sighle Fitzgerald.
Welcome.
Thank you, Gurmila Magat. It's lovely to be here, and a lot of pressure there with the best guest so far. So I was going to put that out there, but delighted to be here.
So I would say let's start off right off the bat. Probably definitely a lot of Americans, but I would say just as, a good amount of Irish Americans would know that Halloween is rooted in ancient Irish lore and history.
Yeah, absolutely. And it most certainly is. And I'm always astonished when people come up to me here in America and say, do you have Halloween in Ireland? So I love the opportunity to say to them, yes, of course we do. And Halloween originated, you pronounced it beautifully, Mike, Iha Sauna. So it was literally the eve before Samhain. And Samhain is one of four really important Celtic festivals. So Samhain was the point in the year when the harvest is over and the darkness is coming, the dark nights are coming. And so Irish communities got together back in the day and they would really prepare for the winter. So it was their opportunity to see their neighbours before the dark nights set in and the days became shorter. It was also an opportunity to kind of get together, to feast a little bit on the harvest and really to say goodbye to their neighbours because they weren't going to really see them and I suppose associate with them as much until the brighter days that came with the feast of Bealtaine, which was the 1st of May. So these feasts were very important, very rooted in the land, very rooted in their surroundings. It was a time when they were preparing to take their animals in for the winter and they were looking forward to, how do we get through the winter? We want to get through it safely and healthily and make sure that we come out the other end, if I can put it that way, when the sun will come again.
So it wasn't all just ghosts and goblins?
No, not at all. But I suppose the fact that, the darkness descends, and I was thinking about this the other day, you think about how illuminated the world is at the moment, but think back to Ireland. I mean, consider Ireland, actually rural electrification in Ireland came in the 1930s. So imagine thousands of years before, there's no lights coming from cities. Must have been very dark in those days. And so I suppose Samhain was also a time to remember those who had gone before. And we talk about this kind of veil where we feel that the other world is very close. So I think that would have informed their thinking. They would be thinking of those who've gone before. But there is also this concept of the light is leaving and the spirit world is very close. And we can talk about what that entails in a little while.
Well, it's amazing the idea of endings and beginnings, darkness and light, and just the celebration around that.
And then on top of that, it's a theme that we've seen in lots of our episodes. It's community at the heart of it, and just feeds in, especially, how tied we are as Irish people to our communities and making everyone close-knit together.
To our community, and I think the big thing for me is how tied we are to the land. And we were just talking before we came here, I'm from County Westmeath, and Westmeath is important because one of the most important sacred sites in Celtic traditions. The Hill of Ishnach is located in County Westmeath, and we'll talk about that again. It was the site of the Bealtaine fires, and it still is. So that it's a really important place, and it was important because in Celtic tradition, it was where the then five counties, as opposed to the four, not counties. help me here.
Provinces
Came together. It was the place where the five provinces came together. They're now 4 provinces, but where the 5 met, and it was a very, very sacred and important place. And I was reminded today about a gentleman called Manchán Magan, who had a great love for the Irish language. He was both a filmmaker, he was a writer, and he really tried to. He passed away very recently, and he's been remembered this year on the Hill of Ishnok on November 1st. But he talks about the land a lot and about the Celtic connection to the land. And I would recommend, if you can find, there's a wonderful documentary in a book called Let the Land Speak. And so going back to Samhain and to all of our Celtic festivals, you really get a sense of how the people were connected to the land. They got their nourishment from the land. They also knew that they had to preserve the land. They had to look after it. And I think that's a theme that runs through not only Irish folklore, but even if you look at movies and plays like The Field, you get that connection with the land, how important it is to us. And of course, you know, in the 1840s and the 1850s, so many of the Irish had to leave the land, you know, because of the potato blight.
Right.
So it's interesting, and for me, it's that connection is so important, and maybe it's something that we've lost in the modern world that I'd love to see us come back to a little bit.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that. Now, let's say, you know, we go back ancient Ireland, the night of Samhain, we're sitting on the hill and we're looking around. What would people see happening that evening?
I think what you would see is it's community coming together. They've just done the harvest. They've just brought in the harvest, which is so important because that can be impacted by weather or whatever. So hopefully they're pleased. They've got a good harvest. They know the winter is coming. They know they have to hunker down. So this is their last opportunity, in a sense, to come together as a community. There's the Irish word mehel, which is the coming together and helping each other out. But this is more of a celebration, I think. And they've lit a bonfire. Bonfires are important because, particularly in Samhain, they're kind of sending the sun off. And that bonfire is sending the sun off. And they know they're not going to see it for almost the guts of 6 months. But I do think there's a celebration of a kind of, you know, the work of the harvest is done. And now they're remembering those who have gone before, but they're also hoping that they're going to get to see each other in the new year. And the concept of Samhain as a new year, the Celtic New Year, I think that came up in the 19th century. I don't think it was quite as formulated in their minds that it was specifically a new year, but it was certainly the end of one period, the period of light, and going into the period of darkness. So it was a real kind of inflection point in the annual calendar.
And then, so the fires, obviously, you said the significance, you know, celebration, but was there anything else in there with regards to reverence, protection?
Yeah, so this is where we get into, you know, I suppose there's so many elements of the tradition have emerged over time. But one of the key things was because of the closeness of the spiritual world, you get into this period where people start wearing disguises. And why do they do that? So this is obviously where the Halloween costumes came from. There are some very interesting Celtic figures and ghosts. We know about the fairies. One in particular, we know about the puka. And the puka was quite an interesting creature. It was a shapeshifter. The ancient Irish believed that if you met the puka on the road, he could bring good luck, he could bring bad luck, he could come in any form. He could be a dog, a goat, a horse. I think the puka is one of the few spirits that you could talk to. You could kind of bargain a bit, and he may tell you something good, he may tell you something bad. So the idea of having this disguise was that the puka wouldn't recognize you, or if spirits were coming, they wouldn't recognize you as you. So I think that's the genesis of the Halloween costume, if you like.
Now I know what to tell my kids. They keep asking me what I'm going to dress for next Friday.
Well, yeah, make them a puka, you know. And there are other, obviously, mythological figures. I mean, I'm always, again, going back to the idea of light. You know, I was walking last winter in Ireland, and it was very dark and very miserable. And I was out in the country again, where, you know, things are very dark. And I heard this noise in the distance, and I think maybe a couple of 100 years ago, it was probably a fox, but that really, it was the banshee noise. And again, that is the fear, the banshee, the old woman who comes and signifies, a death in the family or whatever. So I imagine if you're out and there's no light around you and the imagination takes hold and you have all these traditions associated with death, and so the banshee, the puka, all of these traditional figures that are in our history, they're all out there. So you want to be disguised, you don't want them to come upon you, and you want to get through Halloween, the eve of Hallows, and get to the next period. So that's as far as I know, that's the genesis of the costumes coming.
And then the idea of going from house to house and getting something, what would have been called souling.
Yes.
Back in Ireland.
Yeah, which, ultimately emerged into trick-or-treating,
right.
So it was the idea of visiting. I mean, Irish people love to visit each other, let's be honest about it. I was thinking about, two things. I was thinking about my experience of Halloween here in the United States. My son was born here, and I remember when he was 4 or 5, bringing him to do the trick-or-treat thing. It was just lovely and very much a sense of community and visiting each other's houses. Where I grew up, and I grew up in a town, not in the countryside, but we would go to our neighbour's house. And the difference between Halloween for me here with my son and the way I grew up was we didn't have the line trick or treat. I think that's probably an Americanism.
Yeah.
But it has made its way absolutely into Irish culture. But when I was trick or treating many moons ago, you would go to a neighbour and they would ask you to either sing a song or recite a poem. So you had to kind of earn your treat. And often we got money, and oftentimes we got fruit, we got nuts, and we got candy, as you would call it, or we would call it chocolate. So that was my memory of it, but very much visiting. You might be invited in to bob for apples. That isn't, I don't think that's a traditional Irish thing. I think it maybe came from the UK.
The UK over, yeah.
Yeah, but again, that was part of the Halloween tradition. So the visiting, the seeing each other, as Irish people do all the time. They love to visit.
And sing.
And sing, or even dance. You could be asked to do a dance,
I know, I often give my lads a hard time. They like going to parties and they have the donuts hanging from strings.
Yeah, that's
Whereas we
thing.
had apples hanging from strings.
That's right.
It's like, if you're going to do it, you do it right. Okay?
I'd forgotten that. That's where you, I remember my dad used to do that. He would pin an apple to kind of the door frame, and it would hang there, and you would be blindfolded and you'd have to try and take a bite out of an apple. So that was a traditional Halloween game when I was growing up. And obviously we had very similar traditions. So I think, Halloween as it is today now in America, it's all blended together and we have the best of a lot of traditions. But it certainly, when I was growing up, it was a little bit different, a little bit less evolved. Can I put it like that?
Sure.
A wee bit less commercial, we'll go with.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, did you hear
Absolutely.
I heard a crazy statistics where they said that Halloween, at least in the United States, is the second most spent on holiday with regards to exterior decorations now behind Christmas.
And that's really interesting because we would not really have decorated as such, with the exception of, pumpkins are now de rigueur in Ireland, and we can talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But now I notice in Ireland people are decorating for Halloween in the same way as they're decorating here in the United States, So that has gone back to Ireland, that idea of putting up the lights and getting the very fancy pumpkins. And, I live in the middle of Boston and I'm just blown away by the Halloween decorations that are up at the moment. I have friends coming from Ireland this week purely because it's such a fun time to be in the city.
Brilliant.
And to just take in everything.
Now, at the same time, I think, and I'll speak on your behalf, Shilling, you can correct me, but our American friends and American listeners don't understand how difficult it was to carve a turnip.
Oh, yes.
As opposed to carving a pumpkin.
Yes, absolutely.
And the minute my two lads complain about carving pumpkins, I go and pull a turnip out and say, there you go.
Yeah.
Start carving.
Yeah. So, that absolutely fascinates me. And if you've ever tried to cut a turnip, I know a turnip here might be different. I think rutabaga is what I would recognise as a turnip. And that's what Irish people did back in the day when they were celebrating Halloween. They would cut like triangles out and make a face in a turnip, and you would lose a finger very easily. There's no doubt
You
about
end up
it.
with carpal tunnel by the end
Yeah,
of it.
absolutely. I mean, these are not easy. And so that would have been the tradition that the Irish brought here. But thankfully, somebody spotted these beautiful, juicy pumpkins and said, this is a lot easier. The only thing I would say, and this is my personal reflection on carving vegetables for Halloween, I'm not a fan of scooping out the insides.
Oh.
I
was going to ask if that was obviously the turnip is too
it's
small.
Solid. It's solid. So you're
couldn't
kind
do
of
that.
hollowing it out.
You're scooping as much as you can to get a candle down inside it.
Yeah. And a bit of light, and you're cutting a kind of a few eyes and a face or whatever. Whereas the whole concept of the pumpkin is very different, but it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And of course now everybody in Ireland buys pumpkins, and there are pumpkin farms to go to. But again, I think that's nice because it connects you back to the land, and that's going to be my theme today, because I think it is important to remember, where did it come from?
Sure.
It came from that harvest, that sense of moving forward, and that also sense of remembering back.
So, as with most customs at some point in our history, the church
Yes.
gets involved, and they like to adjust things.
They do, and you can see it in a couple of places with the traditional Celtic festival. So we talk maybe just first about spring, which was known as Imbolc. That was really the arrival of meteorological spring in Ireland, the 1st of February, and that would have been again a Celtic festival around the arrival of spring. So I suppose the church really took that and turned that into the whole St. Bridget's Day festival. And so for years growing up, that was traditionally St. Bridget's Day. And I'm happy to say it is now a national holiday. It's our newest national holiday. I think this year is our 4th celebration of St. Bridget's Day as a national holiday. So then unsurprisingly, because I think probably because of the ghoulish nature of Halloween and Samhain, the church kind of built in a couple of holidays around it. So you have Halloween on the 31st, and then on the 1st of November you have All Saints' Day, which is an important church holiday where we acknowledge all the various saints. But the next day is the one I like best, and it's All Souls' Day. And All Souls, again, is very much a time of remembrance, and it's a time to remember those who passed away. My own dad died on All Souls' Day, and I remember people saying to me, what a great day to go, because that is the day that all souls who die are guaranteed to get into heaven. So he lucked out that day. He would have got there anyway. But again, so then November and that period around Iha Sauna and All Souls' Day has become about remembering those who've gone before us. And that month of November leading into the Christmas holidays is about remembering those who've passed away. So it would have started back in the Celtic days and has evolved to what it is now.
Sure.
And then obviously, other things that shifted. I found I was back home last week with a group of Americans.
All right.
And the biggest thing that threw them in the approach to Halloween was the fireworks sales that were going on everywhere.
Right.
Because that's Americans equating fireworks. It's the summer. It's 4th of July. Not coming in to Halloween and big fireworks celebrations that go on.
But again, I think that is kind of a merging of, your Guy Fawkes night.
Bringing over the UK influence. Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
So that would have come in. So the bonfires would have been part of the kind of the original. I think what's happened then is we've taken like little elements of
well, I mean, there's some issues in the north with bonfires being associated at other times of the year. So maybe we pivoted a wee bit.
But look, what I would say is any celebration of Halloween, any celebration of these great traditions is wonderful. But we do, and what I would say is here in America, we get the fireworks for everything. I would be saying keep your pets safe, because that is the key message, isn't it?
Yeah,
sure.
So many
it
animals
is.
and so many dogs in particular are terrified of the fireworks. So keep them safe. give them some ambient noise.
But then flipping around, it's Irish immigration, everyone coming over here, bringing the traditions and cultures
Yep.
and shifting it. So obviously, you know,
Yep.
we bring Samhain, we bring everything with us. Trick or treating emerges, becomes a commercial enterprise. It's great. You know, turnips become pumpkins.
They
we
do.
know.
Yeah.
But it's just another aspect of the influence that Irish immigration has had on the United States and the American mindset without Americans even realizing. I mean, Halloween is seen as an American celebration,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
doesn't originate here in any way.
No.
It came over with mass immigration of the Irish people.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's not only in America, but it's gone around the world. And certainly we in the Department of Foreign Affairs and all our mission network, in all our consulates, our embassies abroad, we actually recognise it now as a way to kind of interact with our diaspora and interact with the community that we're living in, and to remind them and tell them about our traditions and how our tradition of Halloween has literally gone around the world. And I think probably America kind of took it to new heights, as they always do. But
Bigger and better.
Bigger and better. But again, you know, it's a great way for us to connect. And so, you know, as a mission network, in almost all of our embassies and consulates abroad, we do something to celebrate Halloween, which is wonderful. Two things I want to say as well is just about some of the festivals in Ireland, because you will know, Shaun, one of the biggest celebrations is in Derry.
Derry, yep.
Yeah, and I've told Americans in particular who want to go to Ireland, they say, what's a good time to go? And I always say, Halloween in
Yep.
Derry. It is literally legendary.
And we're
But
looking,
it is
I
like
think,
nothing else.
Netflix are filming a big documentary there right now.
Yeah.
Oh, are
on the
they?
build
Yeah.
up to how the celebration's put together in Derry.
It's incredible.
Wow.
It really is incredible, because there's a piece of street theatre, you've got the beautiful walled city, but it is, I think, the biggest Halloween celebration in the world.
Yep.
It is phenomenal. And
Wow,
it is
that does sound
something that
great.
I've been to, and I always recommend it. And then I was talking to somebody during the week who was going to Dublin actually today, and they said, you know what we're going to do? We're doing the Bram Stoker tour. And there's a Bram Stoker festival.
yeah.
So again, that brings in another bit of ghoulishness that comes from mainland Europe. But
Yeah.
obviously Bram Stoker spent a lot of time in Dublin, and there is a Dublin link with the Dracula books. So they're kind of interesting, quirky little things that people don't necessarily know are happening, but yeah, definitely all over the country next week there will be amazing local festivals.
That's it. My eldest has a countdown clock going on. His birthday's Halloween. So it was his 18th birthday. We're
Right.
going to Derry and
Yes,
having that
yeah,
set, you know, so
yeah.
he can have his first legal pint at Halloween in Derry. So.
Well, it certainly is. It's phenomenal, and I totally recommend it.
So within that, obviously, Halloween has shifted. How you know, from the time that we grew up in Ireland,
Yeah.
and our experiences, obviously in Westmeath, me up in Antrim, you know, and there's subtle differences there
Yes,
between them.
yeah,
But
yeah.
how would you say Halloween has changed today in Ireland?
It has become a little more American.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about the lights, you know, the decorations or whatever. Yeah, you do feel the American influence, but I do think the roots are still there. And maybe one of the things that I suppose Irish people celebrate a little bit more. I mean, here it's the candy, it's the trick or treating. I do like to focus on the food around Halloween. So, you know, we were talking about the puka and, you know, that horrible shape-shifting goblin type thing that could beset you. One of the traditional dishes that we cook in Ireland around Halloween is very associated with it, is the potato dish colcannon. Which is basically potatoes that are baked up with kale or with onions or whatever. And so the tradition was that you would leave out a bowl of colcannon for the puka, so he would stay away from you. And then the other thing, which I love, is the traditional Irish brack for Halloween. And both of these foods are kind of interfered with in the Halloween context in that people put little things into them. So, for example, in your Halloween brack, there's usually a coin, there may be a ring, there may be a stick. And these were kind of traditional ways of you know, predicting what the future might bring. So if you bite into your Halloween brack and there's a ring in it, that was it to signify you might get married in the coming year. There was a rag, I think that meant poverty. It wasn't a great sign. Stick wasn't so good either. And then there was always a coin in the Halloween brack. And actually, on my first Halloween here, I just got back from Ireland, and my friend made me this beautiful brack, and I had to go in to meet the governor for my first time. I had to go in and meet the governor. So I put it in this lovely gift bag and went in, and we had a great discussion, because obviously Governor Healy here has her roots in Ireland as well. So she was very familiar with the whole tradition around that. So I like to focus on the food element, because I do think it's more accentuated in Ireland, that we still think and we serve the traditional foods. What I do see in New England is that kind of these fall events, and I'm not talking Oktoberfest, but I'm talking about doing things with apples, cider, all of that. That kind of feeds into that.
Well, New England also has. I mean, New England also has Salem. I mean, there's a lot.
Well, that's Halloween on speed.
Yes.
That is Halloween on speed. I have been there, and I have to say it was an absolute assault on the senses. But yeah, it's there, and you can see all the Celtic roots. Yeah. You can see all the Celtic roots, no matter how things have changed. It's there. It's there.
And totally aside, with regards to Salem, I mean, there's also the roots of, they've always said that a lot of the women that were persecuted back then that would quote unquote speak in tongues, they were Irish who were speaking Irish. So
which is, it's so sad when you think about it. But again, the Irish language and the whole meaning around Samhain, I think it's really important. I love to, if we're talking about New Year's resolutions, if you want to take, Samhain and that festival as kind of a period where you look ahead, or you're thinking about maybe, doing something for the winter. This winter, I've decided to improve my Irish language. Because although I learned it in school, I'm not a natural Gaeilgeoir. I want to be able to do more. So there's a lot of online resources. So I would say, as the winter evenings are coming, go to Conran na Gaeilge websites. There are lots of websites where you can do online Irish language classes. And of course, there are lots of Irish language classes in our cultural centres.
Yes.
Here, I was even up in Maine during the week, and they have an Irish language class every evening. So if you're looking for something to do on the winter evenings, you could start your Irish. And I was thinking about it. I mentioned Manchán Magan, and I'm going to come back to him because he had such a love of Irish, and he talks about the fact that there are so many Irish words for so many different things, and Irish language is very specific. So it really drills down into the detail. And I'll give you one example, because I love the sea. I swim with a group here year round, and there are so many ways to describe the sea. And one of them is clog araga, and literally it means a rough sea close to the shore, caused by the waves hitting against a cliff and rebounding with increased force. So there's so many Irish language words for things to do with nature, things to do with the sea, things to do with food, with animals. So it is interesting. I would recommend people dig into some of his books. It's a lovely way to connect with your Irish language.
Well, and like you were just saying, whether it's the language or our Celtic roots, a lot of it is surrounding around our relationship with the land.
Absolutely.
Which I think is even more important, or just as important today with ongoing ecological issues and everything. So
absolutely.
Yeah, but again, and we see that in New England. You were saying, Sheila, we like to call this time Harvest Festival rather than just we're coming into Halloween, Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
It really is Harvest Fest, and the things that are going, whether it's apple picking, pumpkin picking, and just having a good time and centering everything again around family.
And you're absolutely right. And that was one of the traditions that when I was bringing up my son here, he was 4 years of age. I remember bringing him out to a pumpkin farm, and we did the hayride, and he saw how the pumpkin was grown. He knew it was on this kind of vine thing. It was huge. He got to pick his own pumpkin. And what I liked about that was it was a family day out. You were there, you saw where your food came from, you were connected to the ground. That word, grounding, which is so important and which we hear today so often in different contexts. But it's that link there. And that's something now that I love to see has started in Ireland. It wouldn't have been there 10 or 15 years ago. But there are now pumpkin farms, pumpkin patches. Where I'm from, there's a beautiful old castle outside Mullingar called Tullynally Castle. And you can go out there for Halloween with kids and they bring them around trick-or-treating. And it is just lovely because it's a place as well where we've got some amazing trees, really 100 years old or 200-year-old trees. So the castle and the heritage and everything, it's there. And again, it's rooted in the ground and rooted in the land, which I love.
Yeah. I love that whole tie-in. It just it's really fitting. Well, I mean, I'm trying to think of what
you've hit a lot of bases. So.
Yeah. I just I love the idea that, and I feel like a lot of Irish Americans would feel the same way, is a lot of times our children look at us and very innocently say, well, where did this come from?
Yeah.
Or where did that start? Or how did Halloween begin?
Yeah.
And I think for you to have that answer for them and it be rooted in your culture is the best of both worlds.
And as I said at the beginning, it happens to me so often. And I know next week or, when we're doing trick-or-treating in Boston, people are going to come up and that age-old question, do you have it in Ireland? And I love that. I love that. Even to the point where I've made up these little sheets. It's like a one-pager that I'm going to be giving out that kind of traces the little genesis. And they're surprised and they love it because then, again, it connects them. When you think of how many people here, particularly in Massachusetts and New England, have Irish heritage. And when you say to them, because they may not know this because they're, they go back so many generations or maybe are not as connected, and you say Halloween is Irish, that connects them immediately, back to their heritage. So it's a great tool for me and, for our consulates just to be able to connect on something like this, a very joyous festival that has been so embraced here in America. And I think that's something I love, is to see really one of our sacred traditions, if you like, really put pride of place in the American calendar.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we can say behind every jack-o'-lantern on every doorstep in America is a piece of Ireland.
There you go.
There you
go. Absolutely.
I love that phrase. Good stuff. Well, I would say we've definitely given our audience a lot to think about, a lot to research, and it might actually change how they celebrate Halloween a little bit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, I'd say there's a lot of resources. Certainly go to our website, Ireland Boston, or www.ireland.ie. We also have an Instagram page, Ireland Boston. We'll be putting up in the next few days and around Halloween little vignettes about Halloween, about the origins in Ireland. Have a look online. There's some wonderful recipes for Irish food, and I think that's a lovely way to connect it back. I'd love to see it maybe a little bit more simplified, or maybe just kind of, instead of focusing on, I suppose, on the more external kind of bright lights piece, bring it back to that sense of remembering those who went before us, and it's a time of reflection as we go into the winter. So it's always nice to stop and reflect a little bit, but also to think about the Irish traditions, to think about maybe what your ancestors were eating and making at that time. And as I said, when we started at the beginning, bring it back to the land. That's where it came from. So go out, have a walk, think about kind of the sounds of the animals you might hear around you, and think about how that might have resonated, for somebody who was in Ireland. Maybe it was the puka, maybe it was something else.
I cannot wait to tell my kids about the story of the puka.
Yes.
They might not be, Maggie might not be able to sleep tonight, but it'll be worth it.
We don't want to frighten them too much.
It's okay.
But no, there's a lot. But again, it's back to first principles for me. Where did it come from? What is it rooted in? And then, maybe the more simple celebration, I sound like a dentist here, but rather than the candy, let's kind of make the brack together or something like that, and explain to the kids what these things signified and why they were important, and how our traditions came over here. So that's always a nice thing to do.
Yeah, and we'll put all those links to Consulate's information and
Super.
Instagram. We'll put all those in the show notes for the episode.
Can I give a little shout out too for our newest page, because we haven't been active on Facebook, and we have a new Facebook page.
Well, there you go.
And I want to promote that very heavily, because we don't have too many followers at the moment, because it's only just been launched. But again, it's a page where we'll be using it to kind of really reach out to the community, as well as our other social media as well. But there is a new Facebook page, so it's the Consulate of Ireland in Boston.
Great. And I really would, for any of our listeners that live in the New England area, I definitely would just shower the consulate's office with accolades with regards to how you are about reaching out to the community and making people feel welcome. And I think people would get a lot of taking advantage of the resources that you guys have and the events you put on. And it's another way of really learning about your culture, but also getting connected back.
Absolutely. And look, that's why we have a consulate here. It's one of our oldest consulates. I think we're going to celebrate 100 years of Ireland in Boston in 2029. But really, at the heart of what we do in the consulate is to support our community. And we do that through our Immigrant Support Fund. It's a very unique fund. It's been running for 20 years, and it's to support organisations who, support our diaspora, if I can put it like that. Mm-hmm. So we support community organisations, but also arts, literature, sports, and anything to do with heritage. So it's a fantastic tool for us, because we can go out into communities and talk to people about what kind of projects they'd like, and really find a way to connect with our diaspora. So that's really at the heart of what we do in the consulate.
It's great stuff. I mean, it's something that in the AOH we've taken advantage of 2 years now, and it's been a great resource. And it's great to work with your office and everybody there. So it's
well, likewise,
fantastic.
We certainly enjoy going out into the community, whether it's North Shore, South Shore, and just people are so welcoming. And as I said to you earlier, people are so incredibly proud of their Irish heritage. So, we're always happy to talk about that. And it's just such a privilege, really, to be in a country where, people might be 1/8 Irish, or they might just have an affinity to Ireland, but that's what really kind of connects them. So I'm always proud when somebody chooses to really highlight that piece of their heritage, because it is so special. And we're so proud of the Irish-US relationship, because it is so strong. And it's we talk about, you started this, Shaun, talking about community. Our relationship is strong because of the people-to-people connections. That's such an enduring part of our heritage that has lasted over decades, over centuries. Those people-to-people connections through student exchanges, through visits, through education, through music, language, everything. It's incredibly important, and that's why the relationship is so strong. That's the community, the transatlantic relationship is really one big community.
Yeah.
Just piggybacking on that, I'll make one plug, or if you want to make the plug, for another community aspect that ties in and has Irish roots, would be the Dippers. What you do with them.
Yes, absolutely. Very happy to plug the Boston Irish Dippers. Again, community. Where do you find your community? Where do you find your tribe? I grew up in the Midlands, not near the sea, unfortunately, but two beautiful lakes. And I used to swim regularly when I was in Ireland. And when I came to Boston, I said, is there a group that I can swim with? And I was told the Boston Irish Dippers. We swim October through May. So it's not for the faint-hearted, but it's fabulous. And not only do you have the benefits of sea swimming, but you also have the benefits of community. Mm-hmm. And it really doesn't matter who you are, what kind of form you're in. You never regret going in. Can I just say that? So might be a cold, very icy Boston morning. We usually dip down around M Street on a Sunday morning at about 10 o'clock, but you never regret getting in, because you come out and you feel energized, and it's so good for your head, it's so good for your body, and it's so good for your soul. So shout out for the Boston Irish Dippers.
Brilliant.
Maybe we should do it on location and we can go in.
I'm up for it.
Really?
Yeah, everybody's welcome. We're also
I would
always
do it.
welcoming new
I would do it.
always welcoming new dippers. In fact, one of the things the dippers are associated with is a polar plunge on the 1st of January to support the Irish Pastoral Centre.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
that could be something on your calendar. I would recommend, though, you start practicing in advance and don't go in on the 1st of January. It's something you kind of build up to.
Gotcha. Okay. A little training involved.
There you go. Time to set up a cold plunge in your back deck.
Yes. Yeah. Now you know what to get for the holidays.
There you go. Yeah. What a Christmas gift. Well, thank you, Sheila.
It's been great.
This has been,
the chat.
this has been highly enjoyable. It's just, like we said, it's all about community and getting back to the land and knowing where our roots were from. But this is a beautiful conversation.
And I just take the opportunity to wish everybody a very happy Halloween, Iha Hauna. And, you know, I think, again, that sense of grounding, that sense of reflection, just take the time, particularly as we go from summer and autumn into winter. And let's face it, the New England winters can be a bit on the tough side.
Oh, they can.
So look, we look forward to seeing everybody when the sun comes out on the other side, and we'll have to light another fire to celebrate Bealtaine. So it's been a pleasure. It really has.
Yeah, maybe we'll have you come back for that, and we can talk about that Harvest Day as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's great to accentuate it. So, yeah.
All right, and we hope that everyone's enjoyed this very special episode and learned something about Halloween and how it began in Ireland. And put on your calendars that Craic on the Coast will be on the road this coming Saturday, November 1st from 3 to 7 at the Owl Triangle in Hyannis to celebrate their newly obtained perfect pint. And we'll be taking time to talk with the pub owners, Desmond and Terry Keogh, as well as local musician Mayo man Dave Try, who'll be there to play that very evening.
And we're looking forward to that next Saturday, that's for sure. And that's it for this episode of Craic on the Coast. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with a friend. And if you have a story to tell or a topic you'd love us to cover, you can email us at craiconthecoast@gmail.com. That's CRAIC onthecoast@gmail.com. And that'll be it. Slunk Foil.
Good, my God.